Good morning, 5th grade. We're going to continue reading in our text, Homer P. Fig, and we're going to be looking at chapters 8 and 9 today. But before we get started, we have a fill-in-the-blank summary. So get ready to fill in the blank for chapter 7. Homer discovered that Stink and Smelt captured an African-American man named Samuel Reed. Stink and Smelt tried to kill Samuel because he would not tell them where the runaway slaves are. Homer tells Stink and Smelt that instead of killing Samuel, they should sell him as a slave and get the money. Homer also finds out that Stink and Smelt want him to sneak into Jebediah Brewster's house and lie until he can find out where the runaway slaves are hidden. Press pause to write down your answers or rewind and play when you're ready for the focus question. Our focus question for today is, why does Homer act differently with Mr. Brewster than he acts with the other characters? What do Homer's actions reveal about the theme? Our vocabulary words for today are cease, and that means to stop or put to an end. Draw a line to this picture. Elixir, that's a magical or medicinal potion. Draw a line to this picture. And oblige, that's when you make someone legally or morally do something. So if something is your responsibility, you're obliged to do it. Turn the page, and we're going to begin reading aloud chapter 8, and we're going to use our CSPS strategy to track our thinking. I'm on page 38. The house on the hill gets bigger and bigger the closer I get. There are puffy white clouds reflected in the windows, and the clouds are moving against the sky, and that makes it look like the whole house is moving too. It's like I can feel the earth turning and have to be careful where I put my feet. The whole thing makes me so dizzy that the gentle green hill seems to get steeper and steeper, and finally it tips up and I'm face down in the grass. Fainted from lack of food. All that talk about biscuits and butter and honey, it must have reminded my stomach that it hasn't had food since I wolfed down the slops intended for Squint's hogs and started the whole terrible business of Harold getting sold to the army. Soft, soft grass, better than a pillow. Makes me forget I'm hungry, makes me forget everything. Next thing, I'm floating. No, not floating. I'm being carried, and there are gentle, murmuring voices that sound like running water. And then I'm in a warm place, and somebody's holding a cup to my lips, telling me to drink. Top of page 39. Just a small sip, the voice says. And for a moment I think it's our dear mother, and then I wake up and see big gray eyes studying me. Big gray eyes and rosy red cheeks and a helmet of fine white hair. Turkey broth, she says. Good for what ails you. The woman with the gray eyes helps me sit up. She holds the cup while I sip the broth. Nothing ever tasted so good or made me feel so warm and safe inside. Do you know where you are? She asks. Big house, I say. The Brewster house, she explains. I'm Mrs. Bean. Brewster Bean, my tongue says. I'm the cook hereabouts, she gently explains. And when they find a starving boy in the front yard, it's only natural they bring him to me. We'll stop right there because we have information about our character and our setting. We know that Homer has fainted from lack of food in the front yard of the Brewster house, and now this woman, Mrs. Bean, is taking care of him. And so in box 1A, we will write, Homer was on his way to the big house when he fainted from lack of hunger. A woman found him and decided to take care of him. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for 1B. And in the text, we could write down one or two things about the character. You could write this sentence down that says fainted from lack of food, or you could write down this sentence on page 39 that says, she holds the cup while I sip the broth. Nothing ever tasted so good or made me feel so warm and safe and alive. Press pause to write down a quote and play when you're ready for the setting. And we know that Homer is in the Brewster house, and that it's the middle of the day. And so in box 2A, we will write, Homer is at the Brewster house in the middle of the day. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for 2B. And we will write down this quote in the middle of page 39 that we've labeled as, the Brewster house, she explains, I'm Mrs. Bean. Press pause to write down the quote and play when you're ready for 3A. We're going to continue reading on the middle of page 39. I'm at Mrs. Bean. Mrs. Bean takes the empty cup and says there's more where that came from when I'm ready. She folds her plump arms and looks at me kind of sideways as if trying to see inside my head. Are you simple, dear? Or is it hunger makes you ramble? I take a deep breath and try to clear my head. Then I tell her who I am, like Smelt suggested, and that I'm looking for my brother and that my horse got stolen, and leave out where I come from exactly so nobody can send for Squint and Leap. Seems like Mrs. Bean, turn the page, seems like Mrs. Bean mostly believes most of it because she starts nodding and saying, oh dear, oh dear. And I decide it's time to shed a tear or two for my lost brother, to really make her believe. And the next thing I know, she's hugging me and patting my head and promising that Mr. Brewster will find Harold. When Jebediah Brewster sets his mind to a thing, watch out, she declares, dusting off her white apron. Mr. Brewster will be back later, and you'll tell him what you told me. Orphan boy searching for his brother, that will get his attention. Meantime, Mrs. Bean makes her mission to fill my belly. She asks would I rather have a plate of meat and gravy or pancakes and bacon, and I go for the pancakes. While the bacon is sizzling in the big frying pan, the kind our dear mother called a spider, I sit next to the stove and watch, because Mrs. Bean, she's something to see, the way her plump hands fly around the room like a pale white bird's, bringing things out of cupboards and jars and larder boxes. Can't help but notice you lack shoes, she says, stirring flour in a blue mixing bowl. Did you lose them along the way? Figured that's enough truth for one day, so I say, yes, ma'am. Lovely pair of boots made from the skin of a timber rattler. A rattlesnake, oh my. Yes, ma'am. Snake had me cornered when Harold wrestled it to death. Snake tried to split his eyes and blind him. But Harold was too quick, broke his neck with one flick of his wrist. Amazing, she said, a snake with a neck. Must have been 30 foot long. We'll stop right there because we have information about our problem at the bottom of page 40. Homer says he has told Miss Bean enough of the truth, and he begins to lie to her about and tell her tall tales about his life. So in box 3A, we will write, Homer lies to Mrs. Bean when she asked him questions about his brother and where he came from. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the quote. And for the quote, we will write down this sentence at the bottom of page 40 that says, figure there's been enough truth for one day, so I say, yes, ma'am. Lovely pair of boots made from the skin of a timber rattler. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready to keep reading. We're in the middle of page 41 where it says Miss Bean nods. Miss Bean nods. A little puff of flour comes up from the bowl. And then your brother skinned the snake and made you boots? Is that what you're telling me? I thought about that and decided modification was in order. Not exactly. Fact is, Harold did skin the beast, but I made the boots myself. Had a matching belt, too. They took everything. The thieves who stole your horse? What do you call that horse now? King something or other? Prince Bob. Bob's a thoroughbred racehorse, 3 years old and faster than a bee sting. Remarkable, says Miss Bean. And where was it you say you came from? Oh, up in the north, I say vaguely. Little no-account place. Yes, but it must have a name, mustn't it? Every place has a name, no matter how small. Smelt, I tell her in a moment of inspiration. Excuse me? Smelt, that's what they call it, on account of the swamp nearby. Turn the page. I'm congratulating myself for not calling it stink. Stink would have been too much to believe, but smelt is subtle. Smelt is rarefied. Never heard of smelt, Miss Bean allows, fixing her calm gray eyes on me, though I thought I knew every village in the state of Maine, at least by name, but I've never heard of smelt. I almost say that smelt had never heard of her either, but I think better of it. Nothing like the prospect of pancakes to make me smart-mouthed and sassy. Mouth shut, I take time to survey Miss Bean's magnificent kitchen. We will stop right there because we have the solution. Homer decides to stop lying to Miss Bean because he feels like she's starting to catch on and he doesn't want her to not give him the pancakes. So in box 4A, we will write, Homer decided to stop lying because he wanted to make sure he got to eat his pancakes. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the quote. And in the middle of page 42, we will write the quote, nothing like the prospect of pancakes to make me smart-mouthed and sassy. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the paragraph. And in the paragraph, it says, how does Homer respond to challenge? What does this reveal about his character? And I really want you to think about the challenge that Homer is facing. Stink and Smelt have told him to go in and lie so that he can figure out where the runaway slaves are. And you need to think, like, is that something Homer struggles with? Why or why not? And what does that tell you about the kind of person he is?